June 1993, Mentor, Ohio. I remember driving to my high school to board the big yellow taxis parked and waiting to take me and some 800 of my classmates to downtown Cleveland. It was the morning of our high school graduation, and there was not a venue big enough at school to hold all of us and our families. Almost 30 years later, I remember that the graduation speaker was Mr. Lesack, the superintendent whose first year coincided with our kindergarten year and who retired as our class graduated. I cannot recall one word that he said. I'm sure I was excited for college, but I don't necessarily recall feeling that either. I think I viewed college more or less as an extension of high school, except that I wasn't going to live at home. I was going to take classes, learn stuff, rinse and repeat. September 1993, McKinnon Hall, South Green, Athens, Ohio. My dad and I arrived at my dorm on a hot, late summer day in Athens. I'm not sure I had all that much stuff, but I do remember a black truck that all college kids seemed to have back then, one that is currently in the attic of Gage House holding all my yearbooks K through 12. We parked under my dorm, shuttled my stuff between our minivan and my room. I was the last member of our quad to arrive, meaning that my desk, bed, closet were established by default. After unpacking clothes so that my dad could take the suitcases home, we walked uptown to Wendy's, had a quiet, unremarkable lunch before returning to my new home. My dad was facing a 3+ hour drive that day, retracing the route we had just taken, and he was as eager to leave as I was to have him leave. When someone on the floor said that a group of guys were going to go check out the university's 9-hole golf course, my dad took that as his cue to leave. He was off, and college had officially started. Saturday, early September 1993, the university's golf course. Golf was a significant part of my life growing up, being the only sport that I A, liked, B, played, C, knew anything about, and D, had some skill. But let's be clear from the start of this part of the story though. While I loved golf and had played competitive golf for years, I was a good, but not exceptional player when compared to those recruited to play in college. Still, the game was important to me, and knowing that the course where the team played was much better than the university's 9-hole course, I decided to try out for the one walk-on spot. On a rainy, raw fall Saturday morning, I walked to the university course for the start of a 36-hole tournament, 4 times around this quirky, unkempt 9-hole track. And did I mention that it was rainy and raw? Despite the weather, I played well and finished a few over par for the tournament. When I signed my card, I learned that I was several shots ahead of those who had finished, with only a few groups left out on the course. With no shelter from the weather, the coach let me know I had bested the low scores of everyone on the course through the first 27, and he expected I would earn the spot. He gave me directions to practice on Monday, but told me just to be sure that I should call him that night to confirm. I couldn't believe it. I was going to play collegiate golf. I called home to report the good news. I also did as I was told by the coach, calling him later that day. He shared that a player in one of the groups behind me shot under par for the last 9 and beat me by 1 shot. The result was the result. I would not be reporting to practice on Monday. Late September, early October 1993, Clippinger Hall, Athens, Ohio. I entered Ohio University as a chemistry major, meaning that I had to take the Chem 150 series, Chem 151, 152, 153, all in my freshman year. This course was populated by science, engineering, pre-med majors, and it was a gateway or lead-out course in our programs. Given the size of the university and these majors, there were always multiple sections of the 150 course being taught at one time. And to ensure the consistency of grades and experience across sections, professors taught from a common syllabus and then administered exams at night to all of us, so that we all took the same test at the same time. Tests were group graded, and TAs did that work. And they only graded 1 page of an exam at a time. So leading up to my 151 exam, my first college exam, I put in a good bit of time studying by myself, my classmates. I reviewed my notes, I rewrote my notes, I did practice problems, I quizzed myself, all the things that made me a successful high school student. The night of my Chem 151 exam arrived, so I grabbed my Discman. You guys know what a Discman is? I actually had CD players with discs. I popped in my Van Halen live CD and headed over to Clippinger. Sammy Hager's vocals and Eddie Van Halen's guitar blocked out the nervous chatter of fellow students getting in last-minute cram sessions in the hallway. I don't remember the exam, but I do recall finishing and feeling pretty good. And why wouldn't I? I had put in the time, using tried-and-true methods that had made me a successful high school student. I understood school, I knew how to learn, and I had the results to prove it. Fast forward 1 week and we get our exams back. With great anticipation, I received back my first exam in college, a C-, the lowest grade I had ever received in my life. A tough start. While I hadn't necessarily expected to make the golf team as a walk-on, not being on the team signaled the end of competitive golf, something I had invested a lot of time and effort in since junior high. Without a team, without tournaments, I was no longer the player I thought I was. More significantly, and really the reason I had gone to college in the first place, was my academic performance. That threw me for a loop. I had no prior experience from which to recover from a C-. I worried it was a sign of things to come. For so long, I had achieved at a certain level academically, intertwining my sense of self and perhaps self-worth with my academic performance. Maybe I was no longer the student I thought I was. As I sat with these disappointments, I realized that I was carrying the weight of, or at least the perception of the weight of, my family's expectations. I knew I was fortunate to attend college, understanding that it was not an inexpensive proposition for my family. A 4-year college experience was a big deal in our house, a fact reinforced by the age of my 2 younger brothers who follow closely in age. They were going to be watching to see how I did, what it was like. Add to this the fact that my parents had different pathways. My father dropped out of college, enlisted in the Navy during the Vietnam War, and then completed night school while working a full-time job. In fact, I was present when my dad graduated from college because my parents were married and I was born like 2 weeks later. My mom had to drop out of college due to illness and she never returned, instead entering the workforce where she met my dad. My success was important, and not only to me. These setbacks, as well as some difficult roommate experiences my freshman year, which are a chapel into and of themselves, began to reshape my early thoughts of college while also calling into question how I thought of myself. Up to that point, I would have described myself as a competitive golfer and a great student. Now I had data to suggest otherwise. What I realize now that I did not then was that I had spent a good bit of time thinking about where I went to college, but not about what it might be like when I got there. I entered with surface-level expectations and goals, all measured in school-like quantifiable outcomes. Assignments, papers, tests, classes, grades, degree, job. Without realizing it, I had assumed that the person my dad dropped off at McKinnon Hall in September 1993 would go to classes, learn some interesting things, and then arrive in June 1997 with a degree, some friends, and some stories. Next step was a job, live happily ever after. The problem was, I had skipped right over the fine print in the course catalog. I had missed the point entirely. I suspect that many of you are far more enlightened than I was at your age. You may have thought more about the types of experiences that will help you grow as a person. You are open to challenges in perhaps a way I wasn't, doing things that will stretch you and expose your weaknesses. And I admire that about you. But if you're not, or not yet, if you're like I was at that time in my life, focus on the what and the where rather than the why and the how, then I hope there's something of use in my stories. College is not, should not, be a means to an end in terms of degrees, jobs, networks. It is not the next step in a linear path towards what comes next. Instead, I hope it provides you moments of struggle, recovery, discovery, and growth. For many in this room, it will be the only time in your life when your directive is simple: to learn. On the chemistry side, I did bounce back. I did so by using the resources available. I met with peer tutors and a professor. Moreover, I learned how to study effectively and as a college student. Even in the struggle, I found chemistry interesting and I wanted to learn more. I found my footing in my major and became that teaching assistant who graded the 150 series exams. And as I moved through my program, I found myself becoming more and more curious and engaged by chemistry, not for the purposes of earning a grade or defining myself, but because the intricacies of the subject matter pulled me in deeper. Do not even get me started about organic chemistry. That would be a great chapel as well. After toying with taking some education classes alongside my chemistry courses, I eventually abandoned that idea and made a conscious choice to pursue the aforementioned degree-to-job pathway, landing a job as a research chemist at Pfizer. I was using my degree, living in a beautiful area of the country, New England, and having great adventures. However, after about 6 months, I experienced another C- missed by a shot moment, one that called into question the life I was establishing, and again, my self-perception. It wasn't a grade or a performance review. It was this feeling in my gut telling me that I had made the wrong choice. I did not want to be a chemist. This revelation, and the fact that I did not tune it out, helped me realize that I had learned more than chemistry at OU. I was willing to accept this setback in my career and find a different path, one that would bring me greater satisfaction in the sense that I was doing something of value for others. I did a lot of searching and researching and investigation over the next year, eventually finding my way to try teaching in something called an independent school. I chose to move on from the stability of my job at Pfizer, to redefine my sense of self and my career, and to move to Montgomery, Alabama, where I knew not one person. I have data now to suggest that was a good choice. May 2022, Tarrytown, New York. To my 18-year-old self, the morning of graduation, June 1993. Yes, it is important to do well in college, work hard, study hard, etc. But don't forget, you're not there to only learn in classes. You will make great friends, people that even 30 years later you can pick up with as if you were still in Athens. Enjoy those relationships and soak in the lessons that each of these people will teach you. Loyalty, living with grace, making mistakes and bouncing back, living courageously, finding meaning in family and work. Don't forget that not all of the curriculum is written down on the syllabus. And one more thing, don't stop working on your short game. Thanks.